shine, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. He fasted 40 days and 40 nights, and afterwards he was famished. The tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered, "It is written, one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and placed him on the pinnacle of the temple, saying to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down. For it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not dash your foot against a stone." Jesus said to him, "Again it is written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. And he said to Jesus, "All these I will give you if you will fall down and worship me." And Jesus said to him, "Away with you, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve only him." Then the devil left him, and suddenly angels came and waited on him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
So the theme isn't really hard to pick up, temptation. From Genesis, we have the first Adam, the original Adam. He has one response to temptation. The second Adam, the new Adam, Jesus the Christ, has a very different response, actually a polar opposite response to the tempter. In the garden, the tempter comes to the man and the woman and says to them, "Don't you want to be like God?" And they accept that temptation. In the wilderness, the tempter comes to Jesus and says, "Jesus, feed yourself, serve yourself, rule the world." And Jesus says no to the temptation. And in doing so, Jesus leaves the space for God to be God. As we enter into the whole conversation around temptation, it really swirls around, who are we? Whose are we? Which voices do we listen to as we think about trust and reliance? It really comes around this idea of identity. Adam and Eve isn't just this little story that starts out our Bible. The story of Adam and Eve is really the story of all of humanity. There they were in the garden, a place of peace and plenitude, absolute abundance in the very presence of God. And yet, the human condition was still with them. And even in the midst of all that, they had a sense of being incomplete and insufficient and insecure. And the tempter knew that. And that's exactly where the tempter comes in and throws out the temptation. And as they choose to accept the temptation to be like God, they not only alienate God in their own relationship, they alienate themselves from each other. There is brokenness. There's the thing about the tempter. He doesn't come so much as to destroy identity, but to challenge us. Are you really enough? Are you really enough? Now, when the tempter comes to Jesus in the wilderness, the temptation is a little bit different. When Jesus is tempted in the wilderness, I want you to hear that. When Jesus is tempted in the wilderness, Jesus is completely human. And just like we have all known temptation, so did Jesus. When Jesus was tempted in the wilderness, the way the tempter came to him was, if you are really the Son of God, challenging his identity. If you are really God's Son. Now, I find it interesting that the man and the woman are in the garden where there is peace and plenty and full relationship with God. It is sunshine and roses, and they say yes to the temptation. Jesus, on the other hand, is in the wilderness. And he's hungry, and he's cold, and he's disconnected, and he's been there a very, very long time. Think about the wildernesses of your life. Times that you have felt depressed, or grief, or doubt, illness, whatever it is. It's in that moment that Jesus is challenged by the seduction of the tempter. If you are really the Son of God, just prove it. And even in the midst of that, Jesus doesn't choose independence. No matter how far away God felt in the midst of that wilderness experience, Jesus chooses dependence upon God's promises. One more thing about temptation. It's never one and done. The tempter returned, and the tempter returned. We know the tempter also returned in the garden. The tempter also returned when Jesus was on the cross. If you are really the Christ, save yourself and save us. Temptation comes around and around. The tempter coming to us. If you really are, or are you enough? And folks, it is so cunning the way he comes, the way temptation comes. We rarely know it's there until we're in the middle of it. And for us who live in one of a culture, an economy absolutely built on it, we probably don't pay much attention at all. Maybe next week you will. How about this? Open a Coke, open happiness. So what is the message? Well, the message is, if you want to be happy, there it is. And can you possibly be happy without a Coke? Hard to tell. Because you're worth it. Because you're worth it. Does that come right around to, are you enough? Well, and if you are enough, then you need to buy the product, right? Because you deserve it. Again, challenging identity and who we are and whose we are and where that comes from. Don't you want to be a new you? Because clearly you're not good enough. So if you have new hair, you can be a new you, the new improved version. My better is better than your better with this product. Hitting us right where we like to be hit, right? Dramatic results are in, because without this product, you are not enough. Well, and I had to go find one from the childhood. I know there's probably 2 generations in here that have never heard this one. You gotta hear this one.
I'd like to buy the world a home and furnish it with love. Grow apple trees and honey bees and snow white like to teach the world to sing. Sing with me. Perfect harmony, perfect harmony. I like to buy the world a Coke and keep it company. That's the real.
I'd like to teach the world to sing perfect harmony, because if we have a Coke, there's going to be world peace, right? Identity. How are we wired for it, and what does it look like? 3 brilliant theologians, Blaise Pascal, St. Augustine, and George Herbert, came up with 3 different ways to talk about how God has wired us for identity. It was Pascal who said that we have a God-shaped hole in our heart. And if we try to put anything else in that God-shaped hole, not only does it not fit, but we continue to long for what does belong in that God-shaped hole. St. Augustine said it a little bit differently. He said that we are restless until we rest in God. So as long as we are fighting and running, we remain restless. George Herbert articulated a little bit differently. He says God wired us with a pulley. So whenever we wander too far away, God uses that pulley to pull us back. There's a young person I know who has this huge conscience, and they keep wandering away, and that huge conscience just keeps pulling them right back. And I'm sure that young person would absolutely agree with George Herbert. Temptation comes to us, and it comes to us saying, "Are you enough? And if you are, just prove your independence." We are in the midst of Lent. And Lent is our journey with Christ to the cross. And the cross is our reminder, big and bold, that we are beloved children of God. Not because of something that we have to prove or something that we can do, but we are utterly, completely treasured, just as we are. I've lost control. Would you please flick it ahead? The tempter whispers and shouts and insinuates, "Are you really enough? And if you are, just do this." Jesus, the cross, the empty grave declare that we are beloved children of God. And as the beloved, you are enough. And all of God's beloved said, Amen.
Well, this light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.